carriers IndiGo and Govt have said that they're in talks with their employees who've kept away from work because of alleged unresolved salary issues. Technicians at both airlines have been staying away from work, many calling in sick over the last several days. Earlier this month, more than half of IndiGo's flights were delayed as pilots called in sick en masse, leading to massive delays in operations for the airline. The DGCA has also come out and shown concern for what is happening, going ahead to say that they hope it will be resolved soon. But it's important today to understand what really are the issues behind these mask sick leaves. Is the pay not being increased unjustified? Many airlines have not increased their pay levels because of 2 years of pandemic, and this is one of the industries which was very badly hit. What could be the safety implications when you have lesser staff in something as crucial as airline maintenance? To understand some of these aspects, I'm joined today by Captain Sanjay Karve. He's accountable manager and chief pilot in the government of Maharashtra, though his views today on the show will be his own. Dhiraj Mathur, aviation expert and independent director and ex-partner PwC, is also joining us on the show. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today on the India Development Debate. Captain Karve, let me begin with your take. Is this completely unprecedented to have such a large number of staff, first pilots, then technicians, go on sick leave as a form of protest?
Absolutely. In last about 42, 43 years that I have been part of aviation, this is something which has not been seen or heard anywhere in the world. And this has come as a surprise to everyone that why so many aircrew or people concerned with aviation are falling sick or taking sick. In fact, the management needs to take a serious note as to if such a large number of people are voluntarily falling sick, there is a need to have a relook at your management policies and procedures.
You know, the management policy and procedure is what we're discussing today, and both the airlines Go and IndiGo have put out statements. They're saying they're looking into it. In fact, ET Now broke the story 2 days ago that IndiGo has said that by the beginning of August, they will be, jigging the salaries, etc. But Dhiraj Mathur, why has this come to pass? Is this also to do with the fact that there are now new players on the block? There is more competition for talent in the aviation space.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. The fact that the cuts that had been imposed because of COVID haven't been restored, and suddenly there is, with Air India hiring, Jet hiring, and Akasa hiring, there is a demand for crew, both cockpit, non-cockpit, and maintenance across the board. So I think the employees probably see this as an opportunity to negotiate with the management. But I mean, on the other side, we also must recognize that I think pay cuts were imposed across the world, not just in India. Of course, it is also a fact that airlines in many countries did get bailout packages. I think Lufthansa got over 12 billion from their government. Air France, KLM got almost the same amount. But in India, there was no such bailout package from the government. And in fact, the government imposed severe capacity restrictions. So, I mean, to be fair, the airlines already operate under very, very tight margins. ATF is amongst the highest in the world, accounting for 40% of operating costs. And during the COVID shutdown, many of the fixed costs of the airlines, the airport slots, etc., had to be paid, including the employees. And I think the employees have been the ones who have had to bear the major brunt because the airlines couldn't really negotiate to the same extent with some of their other vendors and the airports. I mean, airport charges in India are also very high. So one needs to see both sides of the coin and the problem. The employees certainly have a point, but then what do the airlines do?
So, you know, my point is that were the employees being taken for granted? Captain Karve, you talked earlier about how management styles need to be looked into. Now, some of the reports talk about these very crucial technicians being paid in the range of 18,000-20,000 rupees a month, no increase in salaries for the last couple of years. Dhiraj, Mathur made a point that, they could not negotiate with their vendors, etc., but employees have nowhere else to go. And perhaps that is why, their salaries were not increased. So, in a sense, now they've had to move because push has come to shove, isn't it?
Absolutely, I agree with you. And the basic concern with the aircrew is not that why pay has been cut. If the pay cut was uniform across the company, really no one would have complained. What is happening is a line pilot who flies the maximum, or the AME or the technician who is on ground next to the aircraft 24 by 7, they are the ones who are generating revenue for the airline. And their pay cut was the maximum. The management, after a lot of hue and cry, took a very notional pay cut of 5%, 8%. Within the pilots also, the type rating examiners and the designated examiners who don't fly as much as the line pilots, they also did not take a pay cut. This is what has actually, been the flashpoint for the pilots and the engineers. If the pay cut was uniform, let's say 25% across the board, right from top management to the lowest, no one would have really complained. And even today, when the load factor has increased, the traffic has increased for last 4 months, 5 months, people are only talking of the pay for the pilots. And it is only talks. And like you rightly mentioned, they have promised. And in India, you really know promises have got no meaning and no value. A pilot who was earning, let's say, X amount, his salary was cut by 50 to 60% during 2019 and 20, which progressively came to 20%, 30%. Even today, pilots are drawing only 40% of what they used to take home for the same amount of work that is being done. Now, if you look at it from legal point of view, aren't you being paid less for the same amount of work that you have been doing 2 years earlier? Whereas the management continues to draw huge bonuses. If I am not wrong, I think IndiGo or someone declared a huge amount of bonus for the management staff. Now, any sane person would wonder, if the airline is running in a loss, how is it that the management gets a bonus and people who are surviving on pay, they get a pay cut? This is beyond reason.
You've spoken some really hard truths very, very bluntly, Captain Karve, and I'm glad you have done that. Dhiraj Mathur, your response to that, that did the blow of the pandemic impact everyone equally? Or were some sections of the company maybe taken for granted, but they are crucial cogs in the wheel to make an airline run smoothly? And we saw that happening on July 2nd, when one of India's largest airlines operations were hampered so badly.
Yeah, I mean, that of course goes without saying. I mean, if you have to impose austerity measures, it has to be done in an equitable manner and across the board. You can't pay bonuses to one segment of the employees and impose severe pay cuts on another segment. Particularly, when you're looking at management versus line staff. So equity, of course, is very important. And as I said on your show about a week back, there are probably some systemic issues out here which have led to this impasse, because obviously the employees, particularly in IndiGo, aren't very happy with the management. This is not a flash in the pan, I think. I think there has been simmering discontent, and this has been, as probably the flashpoint may have been the sudden opportunity to find employment elsewhere that led to what may or may not have been a concerted action by the employees in terms of taking casual leave. But definitely, there has to be equity whenever such measures are adopted, and it starts from the top, not from the bottom. If it starts from the top, it's much easier to enforce and maintain harmony and prevent discontent. So yeah, Sanjay has an absolutely valid point that you can't give bonuses to management and impose salary cuts on the crew and maintenance staff, the guys who are actually running the airlines and bringing in the revenue.
Here, there's another issue.
Yes,
What
yes,
happens
go
is
ahead.
the normal question would arise to a common man on the streets. Why is it that the pilots and the AME did not pipe up in 2019 or 20 when the hikes were given to management or there was no salary cut? Unfortunately, what happens is if a pilot does not fly for 3 months, he loses his currency. To regain his currency, he needs to fly either on a simulator or on an aircraft with a designated examiner or a type rating examiner, which costs a huge amount of money. Any sane person at that point of time is going to say, the choice with me is to stand up against the management, take their wrath, or lose my currency. And if I lose my currency, everyone is within its rights to say, look, I don't require your services because I require to spend X amount of money to get you back in the cockpit. This currency business is what has been actually pulling everyone down. And these rules are stringent. I don't blame the DGCA, they are the regulator. In the interest of safety, they really cannot compromise on these standards. They have to maintain those mandatory regulations that if you don't fly for 3 months, you need to carry out certain checks.
No, but my question is from the flyers, passengers' point of view, as they're saying all of this, I want to understand the implications for aviation safety at the end of the day. If you have disgruntled pilots, if you have airline, technicians, maintenance technicians who are not coming into work, or you're short-staffed on that end, in terms of overall operations and safety, what's the impact, Captain Karve?
It is going to affect the safety. Imagine someone who is working on a night shift. Invariably, in India's domestic sector, unlike the US, where they have the red-eye flights, in India, normally the domestic flying stops by about 1:30, 2 o'clock and restarts by about 5 in the morning. And you have about 4 to 6 hours at night where people work on the aircraft. Now imagine the same crew continuing working throughout the day or working in the day and moving on to the night. You're putting them under physical and mental stress. There is a room for error. And unfortunately, aviation is an unforgiving business. And the worst part is, in all this scenario, God forbid there is an incident, it will never be the management. It will be the error of the engineer or it will be the error of the pilot. And the general perception of the public will be, oh, these pilots are nasty people. The AMEs are trying to be tough. It is not so.
Dhiraj, Mathur, your comment on this last point in terms of the implications, especially on safety?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this, it's not just people taking leave, but having people who are disgruntled performing key operations like maintenance of aircraft is not at all desirable from a safety perspective as far as passengers are concerned. And here, frankly, the buck stops with the management. The responsibility primarily is of the management to ensure that there is no compromise on safety. They have to address, like I said last week also, I've read that one of these airlines have issued notices to the staff, legal notices. I think that's a very counterproductive move. They have to resolve the issues. The problems faced, particularly by the lower end in terms of salary employees, are genuine. Their problems need to be addressed by the management. They've got to be compassionate. They've got to be as employees across the world have been during COVID. They need to be compassionate, and they need to take into account the fact that people have suffered. They've willingly taken salary cuts, and it's now time for the airlines to address their issues. It's not going to be possible, as I said earlier, for the airlines to, nobody has unlimited deep pockets. There are issues of, resources that almost every airline is facing in greater or lesser measure. But having said that, I think there is need for compassion. There's need for a dialogue. And there's need for some immediate measures, even if they're token to start off with, but with some sort of roadmap showing employees how their salaries are going to be restored, how their perks and other facilities are going to be restored. You've got to talk to the employees, and you've got to be compassionate. You cannot be authoritative or resort to the to legal measures. That, I think, would be counterproductive.
I think we also need to look at this in the bigger picture, because at the end of the day, it's about safety, it's about
Exactly.
operations, and in a space where there's going to be more and more competition for talent.
Yeah.
So hopefully, as the economy opens up, the situation of the aviation industry also improves, and it's not the key cogs in the wheel as employees who have to bear the brunt. Thank you so much, Captain Sanjay Karve and Dhiraj Mathur, for joining us on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Thank you. Bye-bye.